So this video is based on stakeholders. So initially defining what a stakeholder is, and then being able to categorize them, and finally looking at a concept which is known as stakeholder mapping. So to begin with, let's categorize them. So we can categorize them into internal stakeholders within the company. So we're looking at, for example, the labour force and employees and subordinates. We could look at in terms of management, and depending on the type of ownership, if it's, for example, a limited company, then we can look at it in terms of shareholders as well. And then we've got external stakeholders. So that could be in terms of your customers and your consumers. It could be in terms of suppliers. It could be in terms of the government. It could be with regards to investors and those who have not invested yet but are considering it. And that might even be banks and the financial sector as well. And it could be pressure groups. And we'll look at what pressure groups are in a minute. So to begin with, what is a stakeholder? So a stakeholder is a person, group and or organisation who affects or can be affected by an organisation's actions. And what I want you to do is really notice that there's a two-way concern there, because they can not only be affected by an organisation's actions, but they can also influence and affect an organisation and their decision making. You have to remember that with all these different types of stakeholders a company has, it's very, very difficult to please every single one. You will always find stakeholder conflicts. So, for example, every stakeholder has an objective in terms of what they want to achieve. If you think about a consumer, they want to achieve affordable prices and high quality. If we think about employees, they obviously want the best working conditions, whether that's financial or non-financial. When we think about shareholders, they obviously want a return on their investment, and they want dividends, and they want obviously their share wealth to increase. And every single one has their own objectives, which they hope the company can achieve. But sometimes the company is not able to please every single stakeholder, and they have to choose and they have to prioritise. And that's where we really consider what stakeholder conflicts are. So a stakeholder conflict, as I've written here, is it's very unlikely that a business will be able to fulfil the aims of all its stakeholders. And at the same time, inevitably, there will be a conflict between the objectives of stakeholders. So one way of being able to determine which stakeholder you should prioritise, which stakeholder should have the biggest influence on your decision, is a concept known as stakeholder mapping. So when we're looking at stakeholder mapping, what we've got here is we've got power and we've got interest on the axis. And we've got high power, low interest, high interest. Now what I mean by that is, if they've got power, if they've got high power, then clearly they're very, very influential on the business. So if you do not please them, then it could be really, really, I suppose, it could have massive consequences for your company. But then you've also got stakeholders who are really, really interested in the business's decisions. They might not be powerful, they might not be highly influential, but they have got either a passion or a commitment, or their time is invested within that company. And what the stakeholder mapping does, it looks at, well, how do you manage these different stakeholders, and how do you try to manage out the conflicts that might take place? And what you've got is, for example, if you've got high power and high interest, then what you should be doing is really managing them closely, because they are the most important stakeholder to you. And therefore, every decision you make as a company, you have to make sure that you are prioritizing this type of stakeholder, because like I said before, if you get it wrong, the consequences could be very, very harmful for your company. You may also have those with a high power, but currently a low interest in your company. Now, that's not to say that the interest won't change. And the fact that they are already powerful and their interest, you never know, it may start to become higher. Therefore, actually, what you want to do is you want to keep them satisfied to make sure that they do not become problematic in the future if their interest does change. And then you've got, obviously, your high interest but low power. And I suppose it's just like common courtesy, I suppose. If they've got so much time invested into your company and they have got an interest and they are possibly passionate about your company, then it's better just to keep them informed. They're not going to be influential, but still keeping them informed might just help that relationship with the stakeholder. Now, we've also got low power, low interest, and that says just simply monitor them, minimum effort, because really, they've not got an interest, so they're not passionate about your company, they've not invested time into your company, and also they're not powerful, so they're not really going to influence your decision making at all. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at a contextual example of what we could do with regards to stakeholder conflict. And we're going to look at something which has been in the news quite a lot in the last few years, and that is the proposed third runway at Heathrow. It's been very, very controversial. Now, there's lots of reasons why people want it to go ahead and stakeholders want it to go ahead, but there's also a lot of stakeholders who oppose it. So just to begin with, I'm just going to show you a promotional video on Heathrow.
Heathrow is the UK's only hub airport, connecting all of the UK to global growth. More than 80 million passengers and 1.5 million tonnes of cargo passed through the airport in 2018. With the runways operating at 98% capacity since 2005, we need to expand. Taking feedback from previous consultations, we have developed our preferred master plan, including proposals to manage the effects of expansion. We want to be a good neighbour and to leave a positive legacy benefiting our communities and the wider UK. The new runway will be northwest of the airport to minimise the number of local communities affected by noise. Redirected into a tunnel, the M25 will pass underneath the new runway. Local rivers will also be diverted, with new flood storage and water treatment areas created. Our aim is to enhance wildlife habitats. For our neighbours, we will deliver sustained benefits through new jobs, improved landscapes, and enhanced public transport hubs, working with industry leaders to reduce noise and air quality impacts. We are expanding our terminal facilities and planning for new hotels. These will aim to improve passenger experience, create seamless journeys, and provide a great place to work. By locating these facilities close to public transport, we ensure easy access by train, bus, and coach. Our plan will support simple connections for passengers across London and the UK. A new Southern Road tunnel and parking areas with terminal access will further improve connections. New multi-storey parking located close to the motorways will aim to reduce traffic on local routes and reduce the area of land needed for car parking. We are diverting several local roads, including the A4 and the A3044, and are improving bus and cycle networks. To support UK businesses, we plan to double our cargo capacity by making full use of the existing site and improving our operations. Ensuring a safe and efficient Heathrow, we are also expanding our aircraft maintenance and other airport supporting development. A new green loop will form a ring around the airport, connecting our local communities with new walking and cycle routes. We also seek to improve access to green spaces, including areas within the Colne and Crane valleys. Landscaping proposals include public open space and areas for protecting habitats and wildlife corridors. We aim to enhance the quality of green spaces, re-provided by expansion. Working together with our neighbours, we aim to maintain the unique character of Heathrow's local communities. We will carefully manage effects throughout the construction of our proposals. With the opening of the new runway, most of the major infrastructure, displacements and landscape improvements will be completed by 2026. Construction will be supported by 4 logistic hubs across the UK, spreading benefits nationwide. Between 2026 and 2050, construction will largely take place within the airport boundary. The Northern Parkway, along with its associated connections, will be developed later to meet future car parking demands. Our proposals will deliver improved passenger experience, thousands of new jobs, and one of the most sustainable hub airports in the world.
On the video, there's a lot of benefits of the Heathrow Airport, especially in terms of economic benefits. Now, from that promotional video, I don't know if you noticed, but I thought it was really, really apparent that they're trying to use the promotional video to ease the concerns of opposing stakeholders. They've spent a lot within this promotional video and within this potential expansion to really try to help I suppose, the local community, because they know the damage it's going to do to the local community, and they know that the local community is going to be one of the external stakeholders which really, really passionately object this decision. So they've tried to include plans to try and ease that concern and to benefit them. They've also done a lot of environmental aims within it, and within the promotional video it really shows that. And again, because pressure groups is another external stakeholder that they're worried about. So they're trying to suggest that actually, as part of the expansion, they are trying to reduce some of the issues which might be created, such as air pollution, because of obviously increased travel. And I think it's also really, really important to realise that if they ease these concerns, then it also reduces the problem of the government, because currently the government, they do have a high interest, and they've obviously got high power because the government they legally can object to it. But they've also got high interest because of all the publicity and the criticism and the opposition. Now, if Heathrow tries to reduce that opposition or avoid or just, try to reduce the conflict, then it might relieve some of the pressure on the government, and it might help the government or help Heathrow get the government to agree to the expansion. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you a couple more videos based on the opposition and why they oppose.
And expansion would destroy hundreds of homes here. Today, the third runway took another step forward.
Well, I'm absolutely horrified.
Here in Harmondsworth, though, they say they will fight on.
We all know this virus pandemic has changed aviation for many more years to come. And, how can the UK government, which is going to host the COP26 Climate Summit in Glasgow next year, approve this climate-busting proposal?
Local people around here are adamant that, they're not going to be messed about, and, we don't want our community broken up, hundreds of houses demolished.
Members were reminded new runways in the southeast are always problematic. This would be the first new full-length runway built in the southeast since the Second World War. But there are many questions, including, would a new runway comply with new climate targets? And will the demand be there, as passengers have stayed away during the pandemic? If this plan goes ahead, then this will be the centre of the new runway, and you can imagine what that means for all of these homes. All of them will have to be demolished. But this isn't the end, and there will be more legal challenges in the future, probably. And this administration in government under the Prime Minister Boris Johnson isn't exactly keen on a third runway. Supporters, though, say 80% of air freight comes through Heathrow, and with Brexit, it's needed more than ever, and it will create jobs.
We're going to see massive change in the industry in the coming years. Initially, that will mean shrinking. I think for the medium to long term, we would expect growth to recover. And if the economy more widely is going to develop, aviation is going to be part of that. So yes, there will be a need for more capacity somewhere down the line.
A new runway wouldn't be open for at least another 10 years. Heathrow said the result was the right one for the country. But opponents think with the pandemic and climate change, the debate around expansion has changed completely. Tom Edwards, BBC.
The rest of the economy is having to cut carbon to almost zero. The airport's expansion plans horrified the chief climate advisor.
Well, it's not a question of liking to avoid it. It could not possibly happen. It would be impossible to meet our legal obligations under the Climate Change Act. So there is no doubt that you couldn't have that expansion if it had that effect.
Friends of the Earth are taking the government to court. Our fragile planet is changing, and we can see it all around us. Record-breaking temperatures in February, wildfires in Manchester and Edinburgh, and for people around the world, climate change is already a matter of life and death. But there's hope. Millions of people are fighting back against climate change, standing up to governments and their climate-wrecking decisions. Decisions like expanding Heathrow. Heathrow is at the centre of the climate battle in the UK. It's already the biggest polluter in the country, worse than power stations, factories and other airports. And it's already more polluting than some entire countries. But unbelievably, our government wants Heathrow to get bigger. Much, much bigger. But we won't stand by and let that happen. That's why today we're in court trying to stop Heathrow expansion, because filling the skies with more and more planes isn't what fighting climate change looks like. Please share this video and send a message to the government that the fight against climate-wrecking runways has just begun.
From the videos, you had the local community, you had MPs, you had pressure groups, all opposing, all using, I suppose, the climate argument as one of their biggest reasons as to how much air pollution it will cause because of obviously more airplanes travelling to Heathrow. And also the local community worried about the damage it's going to do to their community, breaking it up, because obviously Heathrow will be purchasing the land and purchasing the properties to demolish it, to open it up for that runway. So there's real worries there, and as you can see, and I suppose it's your opinion as to how you categorise them via this stakeholder map. Who do you believe have high interests? Who do you believe have high power? I mean, I think it's pretty apparent that the local community, they've definitely got high interest. Now, is their power high? Is it kind of in between? Again, that's for you to kind of determine that with a solid argument to justify it. With pressure groups, again, they've got high interest, but what impact are they actually having? Are they causing more and more people to take note and, I suppose, to kind of oppose it? If so, then you could argue actually they are pretty powerful. But definitely from all this, the government are the ones that have the high power and the high interest, and they're the ones that really need to be managed closely by Heathrow to make sure that they're on board with it.